Hello, and welcome to today's edition of the Live and Invest Overseas podcast. I'm Kat Kalashian. I'm our senior Europe correspondent, and I'm based here in Paris, where I am right now. And joining me all the way from Mexico is Lee, or actually, he's joining me all the way from the western coast of the Americas. I'm not exactly sure where he is right now, but he is a regular Mexican resident. He splits his time between Mexico and California right now, and spends the majority, I think, of his time in Mexico. And he has been living there for several years. Lee Harrison is our in-house Mexico correspondent, and he's here to tell us all about the things that you'll wish you had known before you tried to make a move to Mexico. Hopefully, if you know them beforehand, you can jump over these hurdles without any issues. So thanks for joining us today, Lee, and we're excited to hear your insights.
Okay, thank you, Kat. I'll jump right in. First, I want to explain that Mexico is the number one destination for American expats, by far and away number one. It's 1.5 million, last number I saw, Americans that are resident in Mexico. About 500,000 Canadians are there, at least part-time. So it's a huge draw as far as Americans with part-time homes and expats living abroad. I took early retirement back in 2001. And while living in Ecuador and Uruguay and Brazil and Colombia, I just passed over Mexico countless times going to these other places, didn't even really give Mexico a thought. And then around 2015, we had rented our place in Colombia out while we were gone, and the guy stayed. He wanted to stay another year, so we had really nowhere to live. So we went and we rented a place in Mexico. And really what happened is I rediscovered Mexico's familiarity, or maybe I was really discovering it for the first time. In the past, Mexico had really been too familiar, I thought, to be interesting, but really rediscovered what Mexico had to offer. And we ended up in 2016 buying a home there in Mazatlan, and have been really happy with that decision ever since. And I want to go through some of the things that, some of the ups and downs of living in Mexico, kind of give you a feel for what you can expect in a couple different ways. Number one is that, excuse me, Mexico is big. And that's something to keep in mind. So it's impossible to generalize about the weather, whether or not you have insects, make judgments on the culture and so forth. It's really too big to generalize in most ways that we would love to generalize foreign countries. And when you think about it, like using an American example, if I wanted to compare the culture in Maine to the culture in Mississippi, it's going to be quite different. The weather in Michigan towards the weather in Alabama, and Mexico is really in the same boat. It's 2/3 the size of the continental United States. So got to keep in mind there's a huge amount of diversity there. So lots of options to pick from. You don't want to get hung up on one place too early in your process, because a lot of good options here. Number two, residency is fast and easy with no background checks and no health checks. And the no background check thing is just a big annoyance that is not going to interfere with you getting residency there. Something interesting about residency, you can qualify with savings in lieu of income. And I saw this a lot in living in other countries where people wanted to come and get residency and they had significant savings. They had a 401k, they had an IRA, so that they're not impoverished, but they did not have a normal monthly regular pension. And so they couldn't qualify. Well, in Mexico, you can use your savings to qualify in lieu of regular monthly income. And there is no time in country requirement in Mexico. So if you do become a resident, let's say you become a permanent resident by using your 401k balance, there's no requirement that you spend any time per year in Mexico. You can not go for 8 years if you'd like and still maintain your permanent residency. You can drive to Mexico. And this, I kind of didn't think much about it when I was living in South America, but it was such a bonus during the pandemic. When I think personally, Uruguay, for example, is an excellent Plan B location. Like if there's some kind of disaster, Uruguay offers a lot as an alternate location to your home country. However, during the pandemic, I couldn't get to Uruguay. I mean, you couldn't, the flights were shut down. There were restrictions getting into the country and so forth. There were a lot of flights weren't flying anymore. So it was the fact that you could drive to Mexico is super convenient. You can load up your car with stuff you want to take down there, electronics and things you might not be able to find real easily, and just cross the border. During the pandemic, we had things that like Mexico was starting to have travel restrictions. Well, we jumped in the car and drove back to the United States. The next thing you know, California is in lockdown. So we jumped in the car, went back to our home in Mexico, and we were able to really create the best lifestyle just by the fact that we could drive and didn't have to depend on the airlines. Number 4, it's easy to bring pets and really everything else to Mexico. So if you don't even need technically a veterinary health certificate, as long as you can prove that your dog doesn't have rabies. I prefer to travel with a veterinary health certificate. Any vet can give you one, but you don't have to go through this certification by your state's chief veterinarian and all that stuff that you have to do with a lot of other countries. You just get your veterinary health certificate or your rabies certificate and come on in. Number 5, different topic altogether, Netflix and Amazon Prime Video. If you use these popular streaming services in the States, you'll be amazed that when you get to Mexico and you turn on the TV to watch Netflix or Amazon Prime, that it remembers like exactly where you were with each episode. It knows what list you had and what episode you were up to and so forth. So that integration worked really well. What you'll find, though, is that you won't be able to necessarily watch the same content. There are certain shows that when I go to Mexico, they disappear from my list on Netflix or in Amazon. It says this is not available in your location. But the same thing holds true. There are shows that are normal primetime shows in the United States that Netflix does not stream in the US, but they do stream in Mexico. So when you come back to the United States, some of your more popular things may disappear from your list that way. But both good services and they work well in Mexico. On a related topic, Amazon.mx is now in full swing. So if you have an Amazon account or you like using Amazon, it's convenient. It's got reliable delivery. In fact, I like the fact that the Amazon delivery guy calls your cell phone before they arrive at your house. So he'll call and he'll say, hey, I'm just down the street, I'll be there in like 5 minutes. I'll walk out to the street and he hands me the package and off he goes, So delivery, I've never had a delivery issue with Amazon in Mexico. One thing I did have an issue with, though, is my Amazon Prime Video account. What I did was I thought how convenient it was that I could use my American Amazon ID in Mexico. The problem with that is that it reset as soon as I signed on from Mexico. It reset my Amazon Prime videos, and I lost all my saved items and all where I was on each episode and all that. Amazon customer service fixed that for me in just a few minutes. But what I would recommend is if you use, you're going to use Amazon in Mexico. If you use the Amazon Prime Video, I would create a different ID, use a different email address for your Mexican account from your American account, just to keep them separate. If you don't use Amazon Prime Video, I would just go ahead and use your American ID. But it's been very convenient. You can order even stuff from Amazon in the US for delivery in Mexico. Couple of things. We'll talk about language a little bit. There are 2 expat annoyances, okay? One is locals, Mexican people who do not speak English. And you would be surprised. It sounds kind of arrogant, right? But you'll be surprised how many people are annoyed at the lack of English from some people who are in Mexico. And I saw a guy in a grocery store, this belligerent kind of guy. He was like berating this girl who was stocking the shelves because her English was not that good. So there are an element of people out there who will be annoyed by that. But the other side of that coin is there will be expats who are annoyed by those other expats who don't speak any Spanish, because you will spend a lot of time, as soon as their internet goes out and the technician that they call on the helpline doesn't speak English, they'll be calling you to translate. So the bottom line of all this is some basic language schools, some basic Spanish will really go a long way. Both eliminate a roadblock, and this doesn't not just Mexico. This is any country that you go to. Will just eliminate a lot of roadblocks for you. All that said, Mexico has more English spoken than anywhere I've ever been. So you will find way, way, way more English spoken, especially in the areas frequented by expats or by tourists. You'll find a lot of English spoken. Many folks go there and never speak a word of Spanish for year after year, and they're still happy with their choice in Mexico. Number 8, much of Mexico offers excellent and inexpensive seafood. And this is something that I hadn't really thought about much, but I mean, Mexico has a ton of coastline, right? And so we're getting like fresh grilled shrimp and fresh salmon and dorado and swordfish and tuna. It's one of the biggest tuna processing facilities in the world is in Mexico. So it's excellent seafood, very, very inexpensive. If you want a nice grilled salmon dinner with all the fixings for like $12, equivalent in US dollars, you'll be real happy with that, with what you find in Mexico. And related topic number 9 is Mexico has great street food. So it may be the best in the Americas. So you see a cart pull up on the street and a family, and typically there'll be a husband and a wife and maybe some kids kind of tagging along because they're just had nowhere to leave them, and putting on serving dinner somewhere on the street off their cart with a couple little stools out front. You'll find some of the best options that you can imagine with this type of street food. And just walking around the downtown where I live, we'll see, you may find 8 or 9 little carts, set up here and there, just like that. So that I appreciate. One of the things that we had a guest here a little while ago that actually been a year or so ago now that said, well, when can we get some Mexican food? And it made me realize that what we think of as Mexican food, like chimichangas and burritos and that sort of thing, is pretty hard to find in a restaurant. Especially in a nice restaurant. They don't serve that sort of thing unless it's super touristy area. And it makes me, the equivalent is like in the United States, if you go to a fine dining restaurant as a foreigner, and that Americans eat hot dogs, right? So you try to order hot dogs in a fine dining venue, that's going to be hard to find. Well, same thing if you want like a basket of chips and a chimichanga, that's going to be hard to find in a fine dining venue in Mexico. So what we think of stereotypically, a lot of things about Mexico, food is one of them. You'll find that it's much more varied, much more high end and elegant than what our stereotype would tell us based on Mexican offerings that we see in a lot of the places in the U.S. Number 10, it's hard to make local friends with so many expats in the area. And this does not just apply to Mexico. I think this applies anywhere. But when that's even if you speak Spanish, it's hard. But you're going to be a lot better off if you do speak Spanish, making local friends. But when we were in Ecuador, we were there 6 months before we met another couple who spoke English. So an American couple there was very, very rare. Everybody wanted to get to know us, so making all of our friends were local friends, friends that we have to this day. And it was very easy because we were the only ones there, and we were kind of a treasured oddity, I guess, if you will. When you go to a place where there's a huge expat community, you don't engage, the locals don't seek you out to engage with you when you're one of thousands of expats. So you will find it harder. You'll make a lot of local acquaintances, and you'll find people that are very friendly. But as far as friends that you do a lot of things together and socialize with and go on outings together, a little bit harder to do than it would be in a place that has fewer expats. Number 11, Uber is in Mexico, but is not in every city, and it's not at every airport. So if you have Uber, for example, we have Uber in Mazatlan, but they don't do airport runs, so you have to check to see whether that service is available. If I could generalize a little bit about this, what I find is that in cities like Durango that use taxi meters where you can go all the way across town for, $2 or $3, Uber was never been able to survive there. Like they don't have Uber in Durango. in places like Mazatlan, where you have the occasional taxi driver who wants to charge you 5 times the rate because they don't use the meters, Uber is very popular there and everybody uses it. So if you want to use Uber, it's convenient. It's like super cheap in Mexico, but do check to make sure that they're serving where it is that you need them. Number 12, Mexico has a lot of American and Canadian entrepreneurs. And what you'll find is, it's not necessarily a super easy place to do business. It's not, they have clumsy tax laws and things like that. But there is a ton of opportunity for Americans and Canadians who can serve, in some cases, the Mexican community. In some cases, they're serving their fellow expats. And there are enough expats in Mexico that you can design a business that caters to them. And I'm thinking things like restaurants and real estate. I know expat developers and so forth. So a lot of opportunity for entrepreneurs in Mexico. And it's a kind of a fairly familiar setting too. So for you, so it's easier to break in there than it would be in places that are farther from the US. Some cities have American big box stores. And I'm talking like Walmart and Costco and Sam's Club, and we have Home Depot and AutoZone and things like that. So you'll find a lot of familiarity in the larger towns and cities with that sort of things. And you'll have also in smaller towns and larger towns, you'll have your traditional tiny shops and central markets. Things like that are going to be there everywhere, as they've been for really centuries. But so in the bigger towns, you can count on the big box stores and a lot of familiar American stores. In the smaller towns, you'll be at the central market. But either way, you're going to find my next item, number 14, is that a lot of your preferred brands are going to be in Mexico. So if you like, say, Skippy peanut butter, you like a certain brand of cereal, whatever it is, beer, it's likely you're going to find those in Mexico. What I found a lot of times is those brands are made in Mexico, the ones I had in the United States, like in Arizona. So every country I've lived in really prior, especially in the early days, I always kept a list of things that we wanted to buy in the United States to bring back. And that's really not necessary in Mexico because you'll have a great selection of familiar brands. Number 15 is fireworks. Mexicans love fireworks, and we have and fireworks really for no reason. Like every Saturday night, there's a big fireworks display in Mazatlan on the beach. I don't know if there's any occasion other than that it's Saturday. Sometimes it's on Friday. It's always on holidays. When I first went to Puebla, Mexico, I was surprised that every morning at like 5 minutes to 6 a.m., there was a big fireworks display. So if you'd like to sleep a little bit later, forget it, because fireworks would go off. So you'll hear fireworks for all occasions, all times of the day and night. The other thing is music. Loud and generally cheerful music is the norm. And it's not only at music venues and so forth, it's coming from cars. If you're near a construction site, you'll hear music playing all day long and the guys singing along with it. So music is generally upbeat, it's ever present, and it's usually louder than we are accustomed to. Number 17, Mexico offers good local craftsmen with a good work ethic. And if you have this like stereotype image of like this Mexican dude sitting under a tree with a sombrero, and that's what you think that a Mexican worker is that's your mental image of a Mexican worker. That was like way off base. And I was really positively impressed. And by that, I mean that they worked harder than I was experienced to working in the United States as a worker. So these guys show up on time and they work hard all day. And we've had excellent cabinet work, repairmen come to do different things, construction jobs and so forth. Been very happy with that. That'll be a pleasant surprise, especially the cost. When you get something done, you expect to pay $700 or $800 and it's like, $75, just amazing what you can get for a small amount of money. Number 18, Mexicans are very family oriented. And this is not, like a good point or a bad point, but it's worth noting that you'll find families out and about doing lots of things together, multi-generation families. You'll see the grandparents and the parents and the children, and you'll see them at times when you might not expect. Like, we live right on the boardwalk, and we can look out off the balcony and see, who's going up and down the boardwalk. And at midnight, you'll see the grandparents and the parents and little 8-year-olds or 6-year-olds or 4-year-olds walking along with them. So it's the family sticks together early, late for all kinds of activities. 19, Mexico is generally trash tolerant is a good way to put this. Now, we have a lot of trash thrown around in Mazatlan, but Mazatlan, because it's a tourist destination, has a crews of people that go around cleaning up, and the place is spotless, after they come through. And then that night, people will leave, drop things on the street or leave beer bottles on the boardwalk or whatever, and next morning they're all gone again. But in areas that don't have this kind of infrastructure, you might see trash alongside the road and things like that is unattractive depending on where you are. It's one of the advantages of living in a tourist area, that you will have things kept nice and clean. In a remote area, that may not be the case. Mexicans are very COVID safe, and as far as I could tell, mandates in Mexico are pretty much non-existent, or unenforced. But Mexicans were good about keeping, like the height of the pandemic when the fatality rates were high and all that near the beginning. They were very compliant. They would keep their distance. They would wear masks in stores and that type of thing, even though there was no mandate that required them to do it. They were very safe anyway. And I'm thinking this might be because the healthcare system is not quite as robust not anywhere near as robust as the United States. So, getting COVID would be more consequential there than it would be in the US. But I was surprised to see that level of compliance with safety standards, and that was done without the use of mandates. Number 21, Mexican decorating. And by decorating, I mean in your house, the way you design homes and decorate homes. Is not favored by Mexicans. And what I mean by that is the stereotype that we have of what a Mexican property should look like. And I've seen buildings where the whole building was done this way, and no Mexican will buy any of the units in it, but they'll have like bright yellow bricks and orange tiles and little bright colors and, piñatas hanging and that sort of thing. And Mexicans who have a level of wealth that would allow them to buy a home on the beach, the second home, are not accustomed to decorate. They're used to tasteful kind of upscale decorations that you would expect from any other culture. So what happens is that Americans will, design a home like this and wonder why he doesn't get any Mexican renters in their condo, and that's why. So it's just another one of several stereotypes that you'll find doesn't hold true. And you think about it, it's like the United States. If a Mexican person watched a lot of movies about the American West, they would assume that all Americans decorated their homes with like deer heads on the walls and saddles, and horse blankets and that sort of thing. And then they might decorate a home like that and wonder why wealthy Americans from the Northeast don't find it attractive. It's kind of the same thing. So just remember, quote unquote, Mexican style of decoration is not really favored by Mexicans. 22, when it comes to paying HOA fees, you're going to have some people who just don't want to pay. And I've heard local people in particular, make excuses like, well, I don't use the elevator, so I don't want to pay my HOA fees. Or another person said they don't like to swim in the swimming pool, so they don't think they should pay their HOA fees. So you'll find this, and rather than try to guess at who will pay and who won't based on who's living in the building, that's kind of hard to do, and that also changes. But what I would recommend is, if you're looking at property, look at the building, the hallways, like service hallways, electrical cabinets, and how the maintenance is outside. Is it nicely painted, or is it superficially painted and coming apart? Look at the condition of the building really good, and look at the kind of the hidden interior spaces inside the building closely. And if they don't look like they're up to speed, believe me, you'll get the excuses. Oh no, we're just about to go into our annual remodel and blah, blah, blah. Your typical, realtor kind of excuses. But if it's not being kept up, just move on, because a lot of times, very often, that means that people aren't paying and they don't have the funding to really keep the place in good shape. And you can expect your property's value to diminish. 23, the taxes in Mexico are super low. I have a property, as Kat mentioned, I have a property in California, and it's about the same size as a property in Mexico. The real estate taxes are 80 times higher in California for a house on the beach in Mexico, and it's right on the boardwalk. I'm guessing it's around it's like 200 meters, so it's like 2,200 square feet or something like that. And when the tax bill for this year was like $97. And the place is brand new, it's only a couple years old. So you can expect a super deal. Like if it wasn't on the water, it was back in town, it would be significantly less. And you get half off for being a resident, which I am. So it's just a super deal. So when you look at the point of this is you look at the overhead of owning a place, electricity is really cheap, the water is cheap, and the taxes are really cheap. So if you're doing it as a second home, that's great. If you're a primary resident, you'll appreciate it. If it's an income property, you'll really appreciate the low operating costs, and taxes are just one of many areas where you'll see that. 24 is Mexico is just cheap. At today's exchange rate, having watched exchange rates for many, many years, I tend to think as 10 pesos to the dollar as kind of being the norm in Mexico. And it's been a while. It's been like since 2013, I think, since it was that low. But so at 20 pesos plus to the dollar right now, it feels like everything's half price. It's just amazingly cheap at this exchange rate. If it went back to 10 pesos to the dollar, which could happen, I mean, anything can happen, right? Mexico would be expensive. So, but right now it feels like everything is half off. And the main thing, like recently, just in the last few weeks, was cheap gas. We drove to Arizona. It's probably been 3 weeks ago now. And usually what I'll do is I'll cross the border, and there's a Circle K right over the border in Arizona. I'll hold off and buy gas there to get the cheap Arizona gas instead of the expensive Mexican gas. Well, what happens now is on the Mexican side of the border, the gas was only $3.24 a gallon, $3.24 a gallon on the Mexican side. And it was like, $4.50 a gallon on the American side. So everybody's crowding into the Mexican gas stations now because Mexico's an oil producer and oil prices are high right now. But it's one of many areas where you really appreciate Mexico's low cost of living. Taxes, utilities, and just the cost of everything you do right now is very inexpensive. And 25, finally, the one thing I really appreciate, and it's kind of hard to describe this, is the sense of freedom that comes in living in a place without excessive rules and regulations. Mexico is, and much of Latin America is fairly well unregulated. And I realize sometimes regulations are an advantage and sometimes they're not. But you really feel a sense of freedom after living there for a while in a place that is not so overly structured with regulations on needing permits for this and permissions to do that, and rules against this, that, and the other thing. Mexico is pretty much free of that, and they're also free of personal injury law. So what you'll find is that not only are you in a fairly unregulated environment, but you'll realize how much of our life in the United States is structured around avoiding lawsuits in a place where you don't really have personal injury law. So it's the sense of freedom is something that you will appreciate. And it's not something you're going to feel on day one, but as time goes by, it's going to be one of the more important things about living in Mexico. So just a couple of things in closing. You can look forward to a low cost of living, low cost of properties, easy residency, and the food is great. It's unequaled, and apologies to Brazil, unequaled anywhere in Latin America, and the rich culture of the Mexican people. Offers a lot, and I can now understand why so many people have chosen to make Mexico their home. Been very happy with that decision myself. And that's it, Kat. I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Lee. You had me laughing there with the Mexican decor bullet. I think that's really funny. You said like piñatas hanging on the walls. And I do have this image of like a Mexican watching Westerns, and everything is decorated with barrels and horseshoes and hay bales.
Exactly, yeah.
It's very much a cliche of culture that isn't necessarily deserving.
Well, we have a friend that owns a furniture store, and he sells like really nice stuff. But we've seen most Americans don't buy there because they think that's not Mexican,
Oh.
And he said quietly one time, he said, we would never buy that sort of thing for our own house,
Yeah, one of the other great things that I loved about living in Latin America, which I'm sure is true of many places in Mexico, is the fact that you can get so much furniture custom made. You can find these little woodworking villages or artisan craft towns where they specialize in leather goods or wood or wicker or whatever it is. And you can go there and bring your specs. You can even bring like a Pottery Barn catalog. I've actually
Yeah.
seen my mother do this, and she says, make me this couch.
We've done the pottery. We use Pottery Barn catalog to make a bedroom set in Ecuador.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
Julie
And a
got
fraction of the cost, right?
yeah, it was $295 for 2 end tables and a bed. And the headboard and the footboard and all that stuff. And Julie had cut the Pottery Barn ad out, but cut the price off because it was like $3,200 in Pottery
Right.
Barn. And the guy said, "Yeah, come back in 2 weeks," and we were very happy with it.
And
But
I'm sure it would have taken a lot longer than that for Pottery Barn to ship you anything, including the cost of shipping.
let alone make it from scratch. But we've done the
Right.
same
Yeah.
thing in Mexico. We'll spend a day and drive up into the hills, and we had a nice custom-made rocking chair, a nice carved wood rocking chair made that we couldn't find locally, and it was like $60 or something. So it was.
Wow.
But yeah, you're right.
Well, that was an excellent insight into what it's really like to live in Mexico. Thank you so much, Lee, for those valuable little tidbits from your life there. And we'll hope to talk to you again soon.
Okay, my pleasure, Kat. We'll see you soon.
Thanks. Bye.